What's up, guys? Welcome back to another week of recapping the sermons that I preach for the youth group that I lead with my wife. And this week we're going to be talking about the prodigal son. So let's just dive right into that. The prodigal son is such a beautiful parable that Jesus preaches, and maybe you felt before like you've messed up so badly that no one would forgive you. I did share a story about when I was younger, and I told my parents I was going to a friend's house. Me and my friends ended up not going to the house we said we were, and we actually all ended up going to the creek to catch crawdads, to mess around. Ultimately, my parents did find out, because not only did I break the phone that my parents gave me to take with me that day, but also all the parents communicated, finding out that none of us were at the houses we said we were going to be at. And I thought I was, as the kids like to say, I thought it was cooked. I thought there was no coming back or forgiveness possible for the betrayal of my parents during that time. And we learn what God does when we mess up, and what He's actually like when we mess up, because there's nothing that's beyond the forgiveness of God in terms of the mistakes we can make. There is more theological discussions we can have about what's forgiven and not, but ultimately I believe that when we mess up, God is there ready for us. And He gives this parable to a group of people that He's preaching to. And Luke 15:11, it said, "A certain man had two sons. The younger asked his father for his inheritance soon after. He gathered everything and went to a far country. There he wasted all he had on wild living. When a famine came, he was starving and alone. He hired himself out to feed the pigs and wished he could eat the pods they ate, but no one gave him anything." And maybe you felt this way before. Maybe you felt like God's rules were holding you back. Maybe you felt like God's commands were holding you back. And you wanted to live your own way. But many of us that have lived our own way and have gone down that path of saying, God, I want to live the way I want to live, we find out that it doesn't work when we just want to live our own ways. See, the son, he ends up feeding pigs. He was hungry, he was ashamed, he was alone. Because that's the problem with sin. Sin promises you much, but it actually delivers little. We find out later that he came to himself and he said, "How many of my father's servants have food to spare, and I'm here I am starving. I will go back and say, Father, I've sinned and I'm no longer worthy to be called your son. Make me like one of your hired servants." So he got up and went home. But while he was still afar, his father saw him and ran to him, filled with compassion. He hugged and kissed him, and the son began his speech. But the father interrupted and called for the best robe, a ring, sandals, and a feast, because his son was lost and was now found. He hit rock bottom. He finally decided to wake up. I can imagine this rehearsal. It says, his son began his speech. I can imagine the rehearsal of the speech on his way back to his father. How am I going to say what I need to say to him? How can I earn his favor? What can I muster up for the father? But his father, I love this, the father sees him. He was watching, waiting, hoping that his son would come back. And he ran to him. He isn't a father that crosses his arms waiting like, when that little rascal going to come back so I can tell him I told you so. No, he hugged him, kissed him, threw him a party. And that's what God's love for you and I looks like. It's not about how good you and I are. It's about how good He is. And He is a good, good God. You're never also too far for Him as well. I think that's something that a lot of people can miss. I've had many friends tell me, man, you don't know the bad I've done. You don't know the thoughts I think. And I think God does know the thoughts you think, and He does know the extent of what you've done. And even after that, He loves you. It says, I was reading a book called The Ragamuffin Gospel, and he said if you were laid out barren in front of the Lord, everything that would normally be hidden, seen, if you laid it all out, there was just absolutely everything exposed to Him, you would experience nothing but the Lord's love, grace and mercy for you at its fullest extent. Some of you may feel like if there was a part of you that was laid out, it was like, imagine like the worst part of you, like an ooey gooey mess with like tentacles, and you like, if you presented it to anyone else, they'd be like, oh, what is that? You lay it to Jesus and he says, I already know. I love you no less because of that. He just wants you home. His love for you never runs out. His grace never expires. He's waiting not to shame you. He just wants to welcome you back. And then we also see at the end of this what happens with the older son, and where I actually relate to the most. I did have my prodigal son moment where I came back to him, but as you can go in your walk, you can actually end up being both of these sons if you're not careful. If you're not careful, you can end up being the second son. The older brother who had never left home, it says, now the older son was in the field. He came near the house and he heard music and dancing. He asked the servant what happened and learned his brother was home and a feast was being held. He became angry and refused to go in. His father pleaded and he said, His father pleaded, but he said, I've served you for many years without disobeying, yet you never gave me a party. But this son of yours who's wasted everything, but this son of yours wasted everything, and you killed the fatted calf for him? The father said, son, you're always with me, and everything I have is yours. But you must celebrate because your brother was lost and now is found. Maybe you relate to this. This older son never left home. He followed the rules and did what was expected. And ultimately, he was near his father. But even though he was near his father, his heart was far from him. And I don't want you to miss that. You as a believer, maybe you're listening to this, you can be near the Father and your heart be far from him. And it's dangerous. It's a dangerous game. When the son hears the celebrations, the celebration of a returning and lost son caused anger, resent, self-righteousness in him. And he refuses to join in. And I think the truth is revealed in his response that he was serving out of duty to his father and not love for him. Ooh, guilty. I've served God out of duty and not love. I'm guilty of that. Maybe that's you. And if you're listening to this, I know God wants you to hear that you're serving him out of duty and not out of love. I've worked all these years, but I never got a party with my friends. Do you ever feel that way? Do you ever feel like you're doing things right, but others who mess up get grace? Do you ever compare yourself to them and feel that you're overlooked? I'm not here to shame or guilt you. I'm just here to be able to maybe use the gospel to show you where God wants to change your life too. Even if you feel like you've been a follower, he can still change your life. He can make you fresh and new. My challenge for you and for anyone listening, if you relate to this, is don't get so caught up in being good that you miss out on God. Don't say I'm with the Father. I'm known by the Father. I've been a Christian for a long time, but you don't actually walk and look like Jesus. I think that's why people resent Christians so much today. Is because a bunch of people say they follow Christ, but then their actions and their hearts and their words, they don't align with that of Jesus, who Jesus truly is, and end up being poor reflections of him. See, God invites both of these sons in to celebrate. And whether you're far from him and need to return to him, or you're close but cold to him, he wants you with him. I just don't want you to miss out on this party and celebration, because the Father's calling you and me home. Whether, like I said, it doesn't matter which one you end up being, whether you're far or you're close and cold. He wants you. I just hope that you know that Jesus is calling you home. And if you are like, what do you mean calling me home? I'm here already. No, you may be far from him at heart. And if you're like, man, God would never take me. He would never take someone like me. I've ran so far into the deep end. He's waiting. He's waiting to see you come down that road. And he's going to run to you with open arms saying, man, welcome home. Welcome home. I love you. If you guys are listening to this, give your heart to Christ. It'll be the best decision you ever made. If you need to rededicate your life and you've been far from him and you're realizing it through listening to this, I hope that your life is made fresh today by his Spirit working power. I love you guys. Have a great week.